So, something that has never really quite, and something that I've never quite understood about thinkers, or at least some thinkers that I know, is that some people, it's almost as if me being emotional during an argument or while stating my opinion, I feel like it's almost as if having emotions or being emotionally expressive at all just sort of ruins the argument from some thinker's perspective. And that never really has quite made sense to me, because I would feel like, but you weren't listening like to the words I'm saying, you weren't listening to my argument. But I kind of had a huge breakthrough about this recently when I was talking to an ISTP friend of mine. And essentially, because I just want to say right off the bat that one of the biggest biases, one of the biggest human personality biases that every single one of us have, no matter how aware you are of things, is that we tend to assume that other people's mental process is more similar to our own than what might actually be true. Everyone does this to some extent. Some of you might be listening to this and think, but no, I actually think that we're also different, that I forget how similar we are. That's true. That's like another bias you could have. But what I'm talking about specifically here is how people look at my behavior. Everyone does, every type, and they think, what would it take for me to act like that? And I think, wow, for me to act like how Meghan is acting, I would have had to felt very out of control and in denial and reactive. And then they attribute those traits that they would have had to have felt for them to have acted and expressed like me, and they put it onto me. And I do this too. I do this a lot when I'm like, I do this a lot in like romantic relationships, either a partner or someone I'm talking to, or if they don't respond to me for a while, I assume that they don't like me, because I think, well, for me to just not respond would mean that I was just going on with my life and completely forgot that they existed and didn't really care to talk to them at all or see them ever. So that's how my bias sort of goes into play, and I assume a lot about thinkers just having no emotions when they do, because they aren't expressing them. But the same thing goes reverse, where I think that thinkers will look at my behavior and think that it must be something extremely out of control or reactive, or I must be like in denial of something. It must be triggered by some sort of thing in the environment, or triggered by my own emotions, or triggered by my own insecurity or something like that. Because sure, I've done that before, and everyone does that. Everyone could be reactive, everyone could be in denial, and everyone could be triggered by their own emotions. But here's the kicker, is that thinkers don't get emotional unless they are really triggered by the external environment and feel out of control. Thinkers don't get to that point unless it's like their breaking point, where feelers aren't that way. Feelers will get emotional about things because they think that that's what's truest to them, and it feels like a pure action to make sometimes. Sure, sometimes I am reactive and in denial and emotional. Well, yeah, but when thinkers look at me, they think that I'm reaching my breaking point because they think of my behavior as something that they would never in a million years do unless they've reached their breaking point. So I want to explain something, is that I'm going to share a quote that I got from Teal Swan. This isn't an exact quote, but it's a concept I got from her. So people talk a lot about non-reactivity and how that is sort of like a high standard for how people should react or how people should be with their emotions. They shouldn't react. They shouldn't give that person the time of day. They shouldn't cry about it. They should get over it, or they should just sort of be stoic about things. I get that that's a virtue for some people. I mean, it is a virtue, something I still try to do sometimes. But the point is that we cannot be shoving our reactions under the rug. There's a difference between a reaction and a reaction, or an action that is taken due to a reaction. So let me say this again. There's a reaction, and then there is an action that is taken due to a reaction. So what does that mean? It means that I can emotionally react and still be in control and decide to choose kindness. It's like a reaction would be like if I stubbed my toe and I said, ow. That's a reaction. That's not hurting anyone. It's not really an issue. For me to say, ow, when I stub my toe, maybe I think that that is how I truly felt in that moment, and I didn't want to bottle anything up, where someone might stub their toe, and I know this is a really like dumb example, but you can heighten it yourself and think about an actual example in your life. But someone else might stub their toe and feel uncomfortable even making a face, or even like shaking their toe, or even being like, ah, or like anything. And then they just feel bad the next time they talk to someone. And then they're like, hey, how's it going? And then and then if you catch the person that just stubbed their toe and you say, hey, how's it going? And then they're like rude to you, or like put their emotion onto you somehow, that would be like an action that is taken due to a reaction. Or honestly, I mean, like most crimes is someone was emotionally triggered and then they decided to take an action that was based on that like vulnerable place. Or let me tell you what I try and do, and that I think a lot of ENFJs do, is I notice my reactions as they come in, but I only choose to act onto it. Like I'm still in control of my behavior no matter how emotional I'm getting. And I think that, okay, in my opinion, INTPs and ISTPs are the two most emotionally volatile types. Why? Because their extroverted feeling is at their fourth position, and so their feeling is not attached to internally, it's attached to the external world. And if you've seen the external world, it's quite volatile. And so if you're an INTP or an ISTP, you have subconsciously attached your emotions to the external world. And you're kind of just floating through them. They're just gonna come at you and then they're gonna leave. And you might not know why you were feeling that way. You might not know how to handle it when those feelings come up. And it's really not fair for people with lower extroverted feeling to judge the way that I act with a higher extroverted feeling and think that it's the same thing, because it's not. And INTPs and ISTPs look at me as if I am being reactive when I feel quite in control of the situation, where yes, there has been times I have been reactive. Everyone has. But you can't think that every single time an ENFJ is being emotional, that is due to some sort of reaction or denial or some sort of unhealthy expression. If you are a feeler and you're a feeler as your dominant function, then you've probably learned how to express your dominant function in a healthy way, at least to some extent. And I know I can't speak for every ENFJ, but I know at least in my life, I will tell someone like, that hurt my feelings, and be completely detached from that person or from that emotion, and just observe it happening and feel like I have a duty to say that that's what's happening because it's what's true in that moment. Healthy extroverted feeling is expressing the truth of the emotional environment, and it's calling it as it is. It's the same as how extroverted thinking will just say what it thinks, what the truth is, capital T truth, in that situation. Extroverted feeling, when healthy, is going to say that about its emotions, but without blaming, without being reactive, without being in denial. More unhealthy extroverted feeling might be like, you're hurting me, it's your fault. Where that's not necessarily the best thing to do, but you could say, hey, like, I'm really hurt by this action that you did, and you are misunderstanding me. You are stomping on my feelings. You are doing this. And I know that this sort of language could seem like someone that's out of control and just like blaming and pointing, but sometimes if you see an ENFJ get really righteous during an argument with you, it is because you are denying the extroverted feeling of the situation, and they're sure of what they're seeing, at least their piece of what they're seeing. They might not be sure of how you're feeling, but at least for me, to put all of this into perspective, the reason why I get reactive sometimes is whenever I know that someone is wrong about me. Okay, actually, no, I don't need to talk about that. The point that I do want to make in this video actually is how, about reactions, what it even really is. I mentioned the stubbing your toe thing, but if you punch someone, would you expect that person to flinch? Because flinching is the reaction. And not flinching and, if someone flinched and then decided to punch that person back, that would be an action that's based on a reaction. But, to just flinch, you can't blame the person for flinching. You can't claim that that person is out of control because they were flinching. And I want to say something about emotions right now, is that I said the same analogy to my ISTP friend, and he said, that's different because that's the physical world, and you're talking about the emotional world. To where I say, ding, 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 yes, exactly. And ENFJs live in the emotional world. So I personally believe that thinking, feeling, and sensing, and intuition, all of this stuff exists outside us. There's an emotional field. There's a field of collective consciousness, like logic, like what we're all thinking about. There is the sensory world that we can see, and then there's like the intuitive realm that we can tap into. Again, like collective consciousness. Like I believe in this stuff. I don't think that the physical world is all that there is, because I know that it's like still, it's like, even though it's not punching someone, you can still like figuratively punch someone in their emotional weak spot, and if they react, that's not necessarily their fault unless they choose to be unkind or do something back to you as a result of that reaction. If they maintain their composure a little bit, I mean, like, if they maintain their composure and they maintain their control of the situation, you have no idea, like, maybe they're just speaking their truth. And yeah. I really don't want this video to sound like a big old excuse. I just want you guys to understand that there is a difference. Like, I know whenever I can be reactive, but it really happens way less likely than you would think. Like, ENFJs are always expressing their emotions, and they might always be saying things like, hey, that was rude, or hey, I feel some tension here, or hey, I don't like the way this is going right now, or hey, I feel misunderstood, or I feel unheard, or I feel unseen, or hey, I need help from you right now. Like, they might always be saying these things, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's coming from this sort of off-kilter place. it's coming from a place of vulnerability or a place of sadness, but it doesn't mean that their head is just like off track. Because I think thinkers, whenever their feelings are like that, their head is just completely unscrewed. And that's not necessarily true whenever a feeler is sharing how they feel. So a lot of times they're extremely aware of exactly what's going on, and they're extremely aware of the consequences that can happen from that confrontation or from them being true to their emotions. I know I am, and it's really annoying to me whenever I feel like people are stabbing me emotionally and figuratively punching me. And I mean, even just like comments on YouTube, like some troll comments, people saying things about my appearance or my style, or people saying things about me being stupid, or saying like kind of misogynistic things. That is like emotionally stabbing me. But see, the thing is that in the past maybe I would have attacked back or something, but the reaction part is feeling hurt by that, and the action that's based on a reaction would be to say something back or say something I regret. But sometimes I choose to take an action after the reaction to clarify what just happened that isn't out of a place of harm or for the other person. It's still out of a place of kindness. And for me, as long as I'm acting out of a place of kindness and a place of truth, then that's what matters to me. And I feel completely in control when I am that way. As long as I know, like, that I'm honoring my feelings and the other person's feelings and my truth and their truth, like, I don't see what the issue is. Anyway, thank you for watching this video, and I'm curious to hear what some of you have to say. And if you don't already know, you should join my Facebook group, Personality Typology for Self-Growth, and also support me on Patreon. It would mean like the world to me if you would do so. I'm gonna also link that below. Thank you.